I've decided that the chain oil is the thing that I'm going to tackle first with this bike. Now, bear in mind it was 8 years ago since I made this chain oil and it's been working pretty well fine, so I'm going to have to like reinvent or rediscover what I've done. So there's a little side cover here on the bike that pulls off, and behind there is my chain oiler. This is what I made. It's a valve, a peacock valve, or whatever you want to call it, for a fuel tank of a GS something rather. I don't know. Anyway, this line here, there goes off to a vacuum line on the motor, on the inlet there. This one here is just a little hose that comes up here and then down, just stops there, and that's just so when that sucks upward, there's like a diaphragm in there, just the air, it just goes back and forward slightly. It doesn't really suck air in, it just moves backwards and forwards a bit. This line here is where the oil comes from. And if you have a look, there is a little bottle that I've got sitting in there, and that bottle has another tube that runs off up the top up here, so that when I fill it, no oil wants to come out the top. And I use bar oil, that's the kind of oil I use, chainsaw bar oil. This line here goes down, goes underneath here, and goes to a tap there, which I can it's just like a micro switch for a watering system. I just turn that slightly, like just a quarter of a turn, and it changes the drop rate. Then that line runs down there, goes in behind here. So move the chair out of the way. Let me get down the ground. Right, it goes around here, underneath the foot peg there, that cover there, down along here, gets held underneath the bike just by those cable ties, goes to a little splitter thing here, and there's it's all dirty at the moment, but there's a splitter that one each side of the chain, and the tubes go there, so it just dumps oil on either side of the chain. Now it's all dirty, but it's dirty there, the rest of the bike's clean. It's been running like that now for, I don't know, 8 years, and it's still the original chain, and generally everything's good. I just adjust it here if I want more oil, like when I first start riding, I can just a quarter of a turn, just make it a little bit more oil and back, and it just does it. It's supposed to be rated at 3 drops per minute is what the Scott oilers say you should do. Now, where is the leak? Why is it leaking oil into that tray there? Now, it's not a lot because I moved the bike. There you go. It's not a lot, but it used to do like 3 or 4 drops. I'd park it somewhere, I'd see 3 or 4 drops, and I'd hop on the bike and I'd ride away, and it's all good. And where I parked it, somewhere else it'd be all 3 or 4 drops. But now it's just doing a bit more, so I had a bit of a think about it. Why would it be dripping more? And this is the conclusions I've come to. I was hoping that the line was clear, like there's no oil in it, but if you look at that, see that oil comes, just putting a light on there, see that oily look to it? If I go up here, there's the bottle, and I run the line, there's the line from the bottle, it's got the same oily look to it, so that line is full, and it goes into here and out of here, and once again, always that same oil, so the line is not emptied. If the line was empty below here, I could say, I have an air leak there, and it's just air's leaking in, and it's draining itself, which would have been nice. I just fix the air leak and I'll be all good. But it's dry, everything's all dry, there's all the connections are still good after 8 years, so there's no problems there. So I go up to here, maybe I've got an air leak here, maybe I do, maybe I just can't see there, so the whole lot's got to come out. But what I do notice is that obviously the connection here is quite large, because I'll show you with this one. I've got that little tube, right, that I'm using to run the oil in. Then it's got a bigger hose on top of that. bigger hose running on top of that, and then a bigger hose again. So I'm suspecting that the connector here is good enough for this size hose, which then steps down to that one, which then steps down to that one. Yeah, it's a lot of mucking around I've obviously done, but it's dry. Like nothing's wet. It's not weeping anywhere. Which makes me think that somehow inside here, when that vacuum's on, it sucks. It sucks a little diaphragm which pulls up a little thing, and then that allows that to flow through. So maybe that little thing that is pulling up is C, or partially C, is not going back. It's got a bit of crud in there. I don't know. I don't know what the problem is. I'm going to have to pull the whole lot apart, clean it all and put it back together again. I'll have a really good inspection of this line, because the one line I do not want to have any trouble with is that vacuum line. Now, if I get a leak in here, it does something, I'm really not concerned. It'll just drain that tank and I just won't have an oiler, and that's all fine. But if I get a hole in here or a leak in here or something like that, then I've got a vacuum line that can lean a motor out. So that's the one that's the critical one. This is the secondary one, but this is the system here that's giving me the trouble. But it may well be caused by that. So I think I'm just going to have to pull the whole lot out and have a good look at it all. So anyway, I'll pull it all out, unclip all those. Take that off, and that'll just sort of fall down, and then I'll be able to access that hose. Take that away. Undo this, which means I have to take the tank off, pull the vacuum hose out. I've got to pull the tank off for all the other things anyway, so that's not such a big deal. So that's where I'm at this stage. Pull it all apart, see where the problem is. I've taken all the things off that I want to take off, and there's a this cover here on this side. I've taken it off on this side, which is sort of exposed my little tank. That just goes up there, which is, I'll put another filter on there. I had like a fish tank filter on there, and it just broke off, but that is there so that when I fill the tank up, that lid just comes off, just screws around, and I top it up from there. This one down here is just all made multiple sizes, so I had a bit of going on there. I think that's some kind of a plastic, and obviously the silicone is still holding, so it's all working. I'll have a good look at that later on. That comes here. This is now loose. It just sort of held in by being in the right spot. One snip here, and this whole lot comes off, I think. Yep, it's not bolted on, it's just held on. Another snip over here, and that should then free that up, and I really don't know where that goes to yet. I have to take the airbox lid off yet, or the airbox is coming out anyway. Anyway, so that's going down there. It comes around here. I think there's a cable tie down here I have to snip off. This cover's taken off, so that goes down here. Snip, 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 and that should just drop down. And I'll take the whole lot off and sit it on the bench and see what I can find out. To get it out of there, I had to take this part like separated from the rest of the cable. So I've got my hose that goes up to the top up there. That's just for the air replacement. I've got my tank. I've got this here, and that doesn't seem to be leaking anywhere down the bottom down there. That's just sort of all made a fitting and glued it in there and stuff like that. But for some reason I believed I needed to have a clear hose there. I think in hindsight I might clear that off and just make a solid hose going to there. I don't know, I'll have a relook at that. Maybe back then I just wanted to see it working. But what I've got going on here is if that starts leaking out that bottom one, which is that bottom one's the one that goes down to the chain, which it looks like it is leaking. If that continues to leak and leak more instead of just getting rid of what's in there, if that leaks more, then that means that little plunger that's meant to lock that off is where the problem is. So I'll just keep an eye on that. You can see how much it is right now. If that becomes a whole heap, I'll have a look at it tomorrow, because that can still gravity feed. If that becomes a real lot or continues going, then I know where the problem is. It's definitely inside there. This here seems to be all okay. I did forget I had another little switch here. I think the reason for the second switch there, or valve there, was that if it opened too much just to this size and it wasn't jetted down, a bubble would run up and it would leak out. So by making it smaller there and the oil being reasonably thick, it just sort of stopped it from doing that, and you may have got a little bit of a drip out of here, but it didn't backtrack all the way up to the top. So I think that's why that's there. When I cleaned the tank out, all this black stuff was in the line. See the bit of black stuff in the line there and coming out the end of the hose there? I think that may be left over when I built the whole thing, little bits of silicon and whatever when I made it, so I think that's the culprit. I put a vacuum gauge on certain parts just to see if it would bleed down over time, but nothing seems to be leaking inside there, so that's a good sign. Well, it seems like it's working okay, so I'll just pull it apart and show you how it works, but I'll clean it again and I'll put it back together. Now, I'll just hold it together for now. This bit here is the vacuum, it sucks. This bit here is just a little bit of air, so you can, as that comes up and down the air just replaces, it doesn't really do much. This is in and this is out, so let's have a go. First off, there's a spring. Now underneath there's a one-way valve. If you suck on that, it sucks this way easily, but then slowly lets the air back in. I guess that's if that was on this is an old thing, so it'd be on a piston motor, a older carburetor motor, so it would pulse a bit, and that way by being able to suck one way easy and the other way not, so it would just sort of even everything out. So that's what that little one-way valve in there is for. The spring is so that pushes down on there all the time. Then this part comes apart. Now there is your in and there is your out, and they just connected there. So basically you have just a little part here that basically by that spring is being pushed onto the bottom one, so whatever's coming in here can't travel down to the bottom one because it's just being pushed on by that. But when the vacuum happens, it pulls against the spring and pulls that up a little bit, and that allows it to flow through. So the vacuum part is sealed all the way around here. Now I could not find a hole in that, and that is one solid piece, so I can be reasonably comfortable that nothing is going to leak into the motor. So that's the critical one, remember? So that's okay, so there's nothing happening there. Let's just pull this out. Just fold that corner over. And that comes out. Now the one where we saw a little bit of oil coming out, with just the in and out with this going up and down, that was coming out of here. Now that is connected to the bottom section. And what I think is happening here is that the oil all happens on this side here, but I think because this turns a little bit. So it's a little bit loose now, it's getting old. So that when that's flowing down this way, it can actually flow a little bit out that way, not a lot. And it's not being really encouraged to because there's no real vacuum on it, but when I sucked on it, it sort of sucked up and made that noise. So I'm gonna, oh no, this section here, this doesn't turn, so anyway, I put that vacuum gauge, it turns on the bottom, but it doesn't turn itself. So anyway, I put that vacuum gauge on it, and the vacuum gauge didn't work, so I'm just going to call it good, and presume that there was just a little bit of crud in here, and that's what was causing it to leak between the in and the out. So it was just leaking on there, just a little bit of crud in there. That's what I'm hoping. I'm going to clean it all up again, put it all back together, and hopefully it's fixed the problem. If I haven't, I've been looking on the internet where to get one of these, and I think Honda make one for their GL 1500, the big road bike they make, but it's $100 and something. I don't want to spend that sort of money, and so I might be able to get a scooter one or something like that, because they have petrol tanks in different places and you don't turn them on and off, so I'll be able to get a cheaper scooter one if I need to. I'll put it back together and see how it flows. This is all okay, cleaned up nicely. So hopefully I've solved the problem, which is next to nothing. I've just pulled the thing apart and put it back together again. And that should be it. The bottom of the tank looks good. There's no cracks, no leaks that I can see. As you can see, it's just a regular bolt they'll drill a hole through and then silicon it in place. So it works. The top is a similar sort of deal, just a tube there with a cap on it, just so it seals off and it just allows air to get in there to replace the oil as it goes down. I put another cheap filter on the end of that long hose just so that no crud gets in there, keeps it clean. I've got it all bolted back together. There's the tank, I've filled it up. The bottom of it's the lowest point, that just feeds in. The breather tube comes up around here and goes up underneath there. That's just to replace air as it goes down the bottle, but at a high point. These are the blanked off for the left and right indicator for the panniers. They just blanked off so they're waterproof. Anyway, that's all done down there. It's ready to go. I don't know how many kilometres one of those tanks lasts, but it seems to last, I don't know, 5,000, something like that. But that's all bolted together. I just have a line on there for the vacuum at the moment. That all goes down. There's my thing. I've backed it off one full turn. On a count, that goes down and around, along and underneath. Feeds on both sides of the sprocket, and that way it flows down. What doesn't get splashed around flows down the sprocket onto the chain and gets it oiled both sides. Now my idea now is I'll just suck on that and see if it starts to flow. I guess that's the spot there. That little bit of hose I'm using to the switches doesn't have a good seal, so as you can see I suck on it and then it just leaks a bit of air and I've got to suck again. That's why you can see it's sort of flowing backwards and forwards. But as you can see, like it moves along, and that little micro switch I have there, that can control that to absolute stop, to 1 drop a minute. If I want to clean the chain, I just turn it up a little bit and that just shoots oil out of there, and that'll just clean the chain off because it just the weight of the oil pushes the dirt outwards. So if it's dirty roads, it's ever adjustable. So I've got that bit pretty well worked out. Once I got it working, I cleaned it all up and it didn't leak overnight, so I'm calling it good.